Amid today's infinite number of choices, you may forget which choices really matter. Modern life is characterized by a myriad of opportunities that are widely available. Outside forces determine one's decisions. In other words, people from a person's circle of acquaintances, and even people outside that circle, may be entitled to enforce their own opinions regarding the way of life, work, and behavior on other people. This is known as interconnectedness, the process that shapes today's reality and many people's way of living, deciding, and behaving. McKeown voices his disbelief regarding the myth of being able to have it all. This idea of entitlement can be destructive for someone. It forces people to take on endless chores and activities, fading out rewards. The extra activities people get into in order to have it all lose their meaning, and the work becomes unsatisfying. Pursuing activities that lack meaning soon translates into stress, fading out the positive feelings someone experiences when they achieve their goals. McKeown proposes to mitigate this situation by cutting down to the essentials, where less means better. Cut out every task that doesn't directly further your goals. Many popular books focus on urging people to cut down unnecessary items from their life, whether it's about decluttering the kitchen, the clothes closet, or even the bookshelves. McKeown uses the same idea to propose to people to do the same by cutting down the clutter in their own lives. It is important to consider carefully each task and activity, and examine whether it makes a strong contribution towards achieving the end goal, towards what people really wish for. Once the important activities are identified, those that will get someone closer to their wish, the rest of them need to be eliminated. In other words, McKeown states that people require a clear set of methods and tasks that help them achieve their objectives. Cutting down the clutter in one's life is against human nature most of the time. It is important to be dedicated, conscious, and concerted in each activity. McKeown boasts that essentialists focus on three essential aspects when it comes to life. Firstly, they propose what is known as an individual choice, which is the first element of the essentialist mindset. Each person knows what is best for themselves, and they are the only ones entitled to decide what is beneficial and what is worth their time and energy. The primary essentialist goal is always to make the positive, correct choice, disregarding everything else. Essentialists further emphasize the importance of the prevalence of noise. More specifically, McKeown claims that any activity that does not further the main goal is nothing more than noise in one's life. Opponents of essentialism state that one needs to learn how to cut down the noise from their life and spend their energy on what really matters to them. Lastly, the third element regards the reality of trade-offs. One cannot have or do anything. McKeown explains that it's important to consider and select main goals. Only a few of them should be chosen, as they're the most meaningful ones, the ones worth to be resolved. The author states that people fail to achieve their essential goals when they're involved in too many activities at the same time, even though they're good activities. Non-essentialists believe they can have it all. Essentialists identify the most productive trade-offs and decide where to go all in. An example of the benefits of choosing positive trade-offs is Southwest Airlines. McKeown cites Erd Keller, who is the Southwest leader, as he consistently chooses positive trade-offs in order to follow up on sound business performance and practices. For instance, they only fly from point to point, which means that all routes go directly from one city to another. Additionally, Southwest does not serve any onboard meals in order to avoid raising ticket prices, so that they cover the food expenses. They have only one ticket class, which is economy. Keller doesn't mind if his choices drive passengers towards their competition. He decided to have a low-cost airline, so he never wishes Southwest to be everything for their customers. His choices were tough, but he chased his primary goal. Although other airlines wanted to copy Keller's tactics, they failed to implement true essentialist thinking in their practices. McKeown goes to such extent to suggest that other competitors straddle their strategy and Keller's in an attempt to emulate his ways. When a company straddles, it means that they keep their current strategy, adding some elements from a competitor's strategy. One such example is Continental Airlines, which attempted to blend in Southwest tactics in its current strategy, McKeown describes how they established Continental Light, a point-to-point carrier. Similar to Southwest, they had cheaper prices, no onboard meals, and no first-class ticket option. However, straddling the strategies together resulted in the inability to be as efficient as Southwest, and they could not compete on price with them. Continental did not have their own specific strategy, which was a costly mistake for them. For instance, their delayed flights resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars. McKeown believes that the root cause for their failure is Continental's inability to understand what the reality of trade-offs is. The essentialist thinking is based on comprehending that no one can have it all, so they can choose the most effective trade-offs. Non-essentialists regard sleep as a blip in their schedules. Non-essentialists believe that sleep is a glitch in their schedule. McKeown, on the other hand, strives to convince people to sleep. He's convinced that sleep enhances the ability to examine, explore, and make connections. Having a healthy sleep schedule, people can do less work in their waking hours, but they'll do much better. He's convinced that humans are precious assets, and nothing will protect and create productivity as a healthy sleep schedule does. People striving for success always keep pushing more and more. They cannot relax, which leads to health conditions and feelings of unease and restlessness. Non-essentialist thinking perceives sleep as a delay in achieving success. On the opposite side, essentialists regard sleep as a key aspect of any productive day. Non-essentialists regard 1 extra hour of sleep as losing 1 hour of work. On the other side, essentialists regard 1 extra hour of sleep as multiple hours of high work efficiency. McKeown further mentions the reliance of Malcolm Gladwell on a famous study of violinists. This study supports the 10,000-hour rule, which states that proficiency needs 10,000 hours of practice in order to be reached. More specifically, the study analyzed the play hours of professional violinists compared to players that are less skilled. However, the same study highlights the professional violinists slept more than their fewer counterparts. 8.6 average hours per night, compared to only 7.6. They also reported about 2 hours spent napping each week. McKeown states that, in every set of facts, something essential is hidden. Upon the investigation of the aforementioned study, the author finds a connection between 2 behaviors. He states that professional musicians spent more time practicing, but their practice was also more efficient because they benefited from more sleep. In other words, the best musicians knew exactly how to achieve a balance between sleeping and waking time. McKeown further emphasizes that their excellence is due to the fact that they know how to develop superior habits compared to their lesser counterparts. Their productive prioritizing helps them focus better, since McKeown argues that what people cannot do is concentrate on 2 things at the same time. Your most important priority is guarding your capacity to set worthy priorities. When McKeown decided to hold one of his classes, he and his coworker had to select 24 students out of 100 applicants. They established basic criteria with entry-level difficulty regarding aspects such as someone's ability to attend all of the class sessions. Then McKeown and his coworker established a set of ideal characteristics, such as whether the student could adopt all the life-changing aspects of his class. When they finished creating both the entry-level and more sophisticated sets of criteria, the students were graded on those factors using a scale of 1 to 10. If the average score for a student was lower than 7, he was eliminated as a potential participant in the class. McKeown then chose from students scoring between 7 and 8. Not bad, but not excellent either. This selection process helped McKeown realize that if the applicant was not a 9 or a 10, they were eliminated. This represents the 90% rule. Mediocre was not sufficient. Things are either the best or they're out of consideration. McKeown realized that the 90% rule can be applied in everyday life too, whether it's a problem or a choice in life or at work. When someone has different choices to choose from, it's important to identify priorities. Using those most important criteria as a standard, every option can receive a score from 0 to 100. Any option with a score lower than 90 should be discarded immediately. Non-essentialists have criteria that are too accepting, while essentialists reject 90% of all opportunities. McKeown contends that the way of the essentialist thinking is to live by design, not by default. In order to apply the 90% rule, he states that someone needs to understand how the trade-offs work. If people are way too strict with their criteria, they might end up discarding perfect alternatives. When someone rejects options that are as close to perfect as it gets, they make a bet on their judgment that a better option, closer to perfection, will show up. Being highly selective empowers people and gives them control over their life. One should not pick the alternative that simply shows up by default, but rather choose the best option by design, one that is not the easiest way or the one that other people believe is the best. The 90% rule can be applied in any area of life. It teaches people that the standards are not as high as they should be. The tougher the criteria are, the easier it is to remove indecision, compulsion, and emotion for the daily decision-making processes. The tougher the criteria are, the more people are forced to think better and consider deeply each and every one of their moves. A non-essentialist person is inclined to accept every opportunity or request. They lack criteria, or their criteria are way too accepting and permissive. The essentialist thinking clearly rejects 90% of all the opportunities. They wait until the correct, perfect opportunity appears. However, it's clear that this might be easier to say than to apply to everyday life or work. The non-essentialist says yes to escape social awkwardness and pressure. The essentialist says yes only to essential things. McKeown urges people to remember one of those moments when they do something just because someone else asks for it. It might be one of those moments when it does not seem correct, but there is a need not to appear socially awkward. This need has to be eradicated, along with the fear of saying no. The essentialists agree only on essential aspects. The non-essentialists accept in order to avoid internal conflict or pressure. There is a need for courage, the courage to say no. When people develop their internal clarity, it'll be easier to refuse with grace. McKeown suggests a tactful refusal that is slippery, yet makes life less complicated. The non-essentialist focuses on solutions. The essentialist identifies and gets rid of obstacles. Non-essentialists rush to find solutions when problems appear. Essentialists, on the other hand, take their time to analyze what kind of factors stop them from reaching their goal. They use their time to calmly identify and eliminate obstacles. McKeown makes the following recommendations for essentialist leaders. To be extremely selective when hiring. In order to do so, the essentialist leader needs to hire only the perfect candidate, no matter how long it takes, and how many resumes need to be read. To use debate until the real goal is contoured. It's important to find the real goal, or search, debate, and discuss with the teams until the true intent is discovered. To go for extreme empowerment. Team members need to hear exactly what they need to do, what the expectations are, and what their contributions should look like. To communicate the right things to the right people at the right time. Essentialist leaders are as clear as possible. They never use jargon or complex, long sentences to communicate. Follow up and check in frequently. Once the best people are hired, the true goal was discovered and they're empowered to do what they need to do. The essentialist leader follows up on their results and pays attention to them. It's important to reward their progress and help the team to recognize and eliminate the obstacles. The key is to start small, encourage progress, and celebrate small wins. Final thoughts. McKeown developed a simple strategy to improve both personal and professional life. The essentialist thinking understands that modern life is way too cluttered as it is. Thus, it's important to get rid of unnecessary things, both internally and externally. Less is better, and simplicity is the guide.